So, a long time ago, like way back in freaking 1980s, I made a video about the Clone High reboot, my reaction to the first episode. That's it, just the first episode. It kinda popped off. So you'd expect I was gonna make a video about every single episode, like a whole series out of this season. Well, for some reason, I did not do that. And what you might not know is, I never actually finished it. The first season, I mean. I think I watched episodes 2 and 3, and then I just kind of forgot about it. When no one is talking about a show online, it essentially doesn't exist. Even though I really enjoyed the first episode, 2 and 3 just kind of killed it, I guess. Or maybe I was being lazy. Well, I aimed to figure that out for myself. So I sat down and I watched through the rest of the first season. And here's what I think.
Way back in the 1980s, secret government employees.
Yo, this theme song still kicks ass. No matter what you think of this season, I think we can all agree this remaster of the theme song is fantastic. Even the opening scene for episode 1 kicks mega ass. You know, you get to meet the board of shadowy figures again, still sponsored by Puma, and you get a very dramatic unfreezing of the clones. It's fantastic. It is probably the most well-written scene in this entire series. So instead of going through the episodes one by one, I'll briefly list their synopsis here. So as you can see, the descriptions kind of fizzle out towards the end there. That's not a coincidence. I feel like whoever wrote the wiki just kind of stopped caring and just wrote down one-sentence summaries, but they're honestly just as effective, so For some reason, the season starts off at such a high point and then just kind of de-escalates slowly. Now I want to be very clear. I don't think Clone High 2023 is bad, not at all. I think it's decent. It just doesn't live up to the original, and it's not because of Gandhi. A lot of people will point to Gandhi's absence as the sole reason this reboot doesn't work. I think it's a much broader issue. These episode concepts, not terrible. An episode of Clone High will always revolve around the emotional bits, and it will always tie into a lesson for young adults, like sex education, or going off to college, or having to do a kiss in a musical and not catching feelings. They're not bad episode concepts at all. They sound pretty similar to the original run. Like Harriet and Frida killed someone, there's a deadly mascot running around the school trying to eat the kids. Sounds like Clone High to me. There was an original episode in the original Clone High about a terrifying mascot running around trying to sell drugs to kids. I mean, they were raisins, but that's Clone High. The problem here is the quality of the writing. Yeah, ooh, shocker, I said a hot take. No, everybody knows it's the writing, but let me explain. A good episode concept is great, but if a writer can't execute on it well enough, the episode would just become forgettable and apathetic. Episode 1 works so well because the unfreezing of the clones should be a really dramatic, drawn-out scene. It's important, there's no undercutting jokes, just dramatic. We've been waiting 20 years for this, and it is dramatic. Here's the entire clip.
Joan? Whoa.
The first 2 scenes of episode 1 are written especially well. After the theme song, Abe talks to Gandhi, but it's just a turkey fire hydrant. So after the dramatic opening, we have a great comedic line. That one really landed for me. The show knows we were all wondering what happened to Gandhi, and it knew to make that the very first thing it addressed. Episode 1 is honestly pretty good, especially in the beginning. Episode 2, on the other hand, just doesn't really have any of those super dramatic moments. You know, this should be the episode where the old clones really get equated with the future. And they do that in the B-plot a bit with Confucius and JFK, but it's just not as strong as it could be. There's so much comedic potential in teenagers who are from a different time period interacting with future technology. It's such a layup, and they just don't execute on it. Like, that should have been a thing throughout the entire season. There's so much comedic potential there. Dumb characters like JFK not being able to figure out how a computer works. I don't know. This thing should practically write itself. I don't know, I mean, episode 9 had some really nice animation, I guess, with a Fallout-esque style that I could watch for an entire season. That's really the only high point. Throughout the next few episodes of the season, the writing will get increasingly more meta. Not self-aware, but meta. Rick and Morty type meta, which is not a good thing.
Does anyone mind if I kick off a montage? Cool.
It's just they explain what they're about to do, or they explain what they shouldn't do, and that's the joke. It's pretty standard writing for an adult-aimed series in 2023, but it's just not that funny and not that clever, I'm sorry. If this is what adult animation is gonna be for the next 20 years, that's not a good thing. That's not to say there aren't a few good lines.
There, sweet principal. It's not that big of a deal.
You're fired too, Mr. B.
Fuck you, Wesley!
But to illustrate really what I'm talking about, here's an actual exchange from episode 6. Joan, what's going on? Nothing. I've never felt better. I do not have an illness I've been hiding since childhood. Like, is that the best you got, really? I actually think the character dynamics are just as good as the first season, full stop. Sure, Gandhi will always be missed, but let's be real, he's not the root of the issue. He was a one-liner machine, and him being on ice is just a symptom of the main problem. Because even if Gandhi was here, his one-liners would be pretty lame, because the writing just isn't that good. You know, I just remembered something that came up in the middle of the season that I hoped would continue. It was a high point, and it caught my interest. But it was a one-off thing, and I have no idea why. In episode 5, Harriet kisses JFK as part of a play performance, and an actual romance starts to form between the two. It lasts for approximately 1 episode, and then it's done. Like, huh? You had a really good story beat there. JFK and Harriet would have such an interesting dynamic, and I would have liked to see them continue down that path for even just 1 episode more. It could be a really interesting dynamic, and they just didn't go for it. I don't know. So, what's the end game for all this? Why am I talking about the writing so much? Well, I'm gonna reveal something to you here. In the credits for episode 1, it says, written by Phil Lord and Chris Miller. You know, the names you know, and I'd wager they bring the most to the table when they're creating that Clone High feel. Phil Lord and Chris Miller need to be here. You wanna know how many episodes they wrote this season? 1. Yep, they wrote the first episode, and that's it. Which is so weird, right? Like, the first episode back is, again, such a layup. There's a lot of comedic potential because of the way the show ended in the first place. I'm sorry, but anybody could have written the first scene of episode 1. They did a fantastic job. Better than I could do. But everyone knew going in that we were going to have a scene of unfreezing the clones and the board of shadowy figures unveiling their new plan. That was a given. This was, by comparison, probably arguably the easiest episode to write, since a large chunk of it is just exposition.
20 years ago, Cinnamon J. Scudworth created clones of historical figures and sent them to a high school called Clone High.
And then suddenly he froze the clones on Winter Prom night.
Our mission is to unfreeze those clones and secretly groom them to one day rule the world.
And this is the one they chose to write, and none of the other ones that are, I would argue, even more essential for getting us acquainted with these new characters. How are the ships in Clone High 2023? Well, there's one good one, and I think you know which one I'm talking about. Frida and Cleo. This was foreshadowed in the theme song, and get this, there's not one single line about it being an LGBT relationship and how progressive they are. This is one moment where the show, for once, doesn't go meta and just depicts a great relationship and a great dynamic. The relationship is allowed to exist on its own, and it doesn't need to become a checked box to justify its inclusion. Sure, it is a relationship between 2 women, but the show doesn't feel the need to pat themselves on the back or scramble to justify it being here in the first place because they need to put it here. I love how it's just the best relationship in the show, and it's allowed to just exist its own way. It's awesome. It's honestly great and one of the better relationships this show has ever seen, maybe the best. In short, I think the writing was really just the problem here, and I don't know why Phil Lord and Chris Miller didn't write more of the episodes. In the original run, they wrote at least 3 or 4 of the 10 that they had. Here, it's just the first one and that was it. I don't know. Nothing I said here was really a hot take, but it just goes to show how much potential this show had. Because I think in the hands of some really good and experienced writers, a Gandhi-less Clone High can still work. So, those were my thoughts on the rest of Clone High. What did you guys think? Did you even watch the rest of the season? Did you just kind of fall off of it like I did? if you didn't watch to the end of the season, which episode killed it for you? I also want to close out this video by saying one more time, I applaud the writers and the creative team for bringing Clone High back and doing a decent job, just not as good as job as we really wanted, but it's okay. I appreciate the effort. It was a good faith effort, and hey, some people probably loved it, even more than the first season. I thought that first episode was genuinely something special, but if they make another season, which I think they might be contractually obligated to, or maybe they'll just can it, but even if they do, I think they could pull it around and make it work. This isn't unsalvageable or anything. I'd still check up on another season if it came out and it looked promising. But yeah, I think the lesson here is apathy is the killer, and people just stopped caring. But I still enjoyed myself. I made it through the whole season. What did you guys think? My name is Kendalls. I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.